Thanks, Jerry. Thanks to Stuart and the RIU team. It's fantastic to be in front of an audience. Thanks to everyone dialed in online. It's been a really good start this year for Hammer Metals. We announced about 3.5 weeks ago a discovery at the Trafalgar Copper and Gold project in Mount Isa. I'll talk a lot today about our tenure in Mount Isa. Hammer, as Jerry flagged, we've got two assets in two premier world-class mineral provinces. We've got 2,100 square kilometres of tenure in Mount Isa, surrounded by large-scale Tier 1 deposits in every direction. We're here in the Yandal Belt in Western Australia exploring for gold. The Yandal Belt produced over 24 million ounces of gold historically. We've got a number of drill targets. One of the things that we've done particularly well over the last 4 months is test a lot of ground and test a lot of targets. So I think our drill campaigns at the end of last year tested 10 targets. We've got results from 6 of those targets still outstanding today. I think when you're testing that many prospects, it really gives you an increased chance of success, and I think that's what we've seen at Trafalgar. We've got a team that's responsible for previous world-class mineral discoveries, and I think that's equally important as having the right ground. As I said, we're operating next door to some of the world-class mines, both in Mount Isa and in the Yandal Belt. And importantly, like many companies at the moment, we're fully funded for our upcoming programs. In a snapshot, we've got a market capitalisation of $64 million, with $6 million in the bank. Directors account for 13% of the shareholding, with our other top 20 shareholders holding 48%, so it's relatively tightly held. I mentioned the team before. Russell and Ziggy were part of the Gruyere discovery at Gold Road, and they're looking to repeat the dose with Hammer Metals. Our Mount Isa projects we've had for a number of years. The team have taken a long time to put together this portfolio. The key here really has been centralised on these fault structures running up through the region, the Fountain Range and Pilgrim faults. If you have a look at Mount Isa, sits on the large fault structure out to the west. And these central corridors really have been held by smaller companies over years, and not a lot of work's been done on it. In fact, our Trafalgar discovery was originally mined pre-World War I. One of our shareholders sent me a newspaper article from the Townsville Daily Bulletin from 1912 discussing pulling out sort of 20% copper ore out of that particular discovery that we've had. But these types of prospects have sat within portfolios over the year and never been drill tested. I mentioned the Trafalgar discovery is part of our joint venture with our partner JOGMEC from Japan. They recently signed up to the joint venture. It was in November 2019. So we're about 18 months into that joint venture at the moment. We've just finished our second year program there, spending approximately $1 million per annum. Their tenure is highlighted in the darker blue areas you can see here. And the Trafalgar discovery that I mentioned was up towards the northern end here. Importantly, that JV only covers approximately 15% of our tenure in Mount Isa, so we still hold a lot of this ground ourselves, 100% in our own right, and I think there's a lot of opportunity here for us to be testing some of the prospects in the area. A little bit about Trafalgar. We only managed to get 4 holes into this target before the wet season really kicked in Mount Isa, and we're probably locked out of the area realistically until the end of March or early April. All 4 holes that we put into this discovery hit mineralisation. I think there's very few discoveries where your first 4 holes all intersect copper and gold mineralisation. 55 metres at 1.1% copper and 0.3 grams per tonne gold, and 60 metres at 1 and 0.25 grams per tonne gold, I think are really the highlights of the drilling so far. You hear it many times that the mineralisation's open in all directions. It truly is. The area here to the west, we've defined a secondary zone of mineralisation. We really haven't had an opportunity to step out either east or west, nor drill test at depth, and the only extensional hole that we put to the original discovery holes was 80 metres to the north. I'll talk a little bit more about the trend in a second, but at the moment we've got a strike length of over 250 metres. And importantly, along that area you can see historical workings in excess of 3 kilometres, and we've got some nice anomalism that lines up with that 3 kilometre stretch. So this is all within that JOGMEC joint venture, JOGMEC earning up to 60% over a 5-year period. If we have a look over on the right-hand side, you can see the Trafalgar deposit sitting on a nice magnetic trend. There's an old shaft down here at Victory, and this overall trend of magnetics, which is also repeated in gold and copper soil anomalism, stretches for 3 kilometres. That 3 kilometre stretch, while you can see numerous pits and old little shafts that have been worked by the old timers, has only got 2 drill holes into it, and both of those drill holes I think combined went for 120 metres, and from our interpretation both missed the mineralisation. Interestingly, I really like this magnetic feature out to the northwest. Again, the evidence of old-time workings over here. No drilling over there. I think when you talk about large-scale systems in Mount Isa, a big magnetic high sitting out there untested is quite attractive, and I think forms one of the great targets for the joint venture coming up. Stepping outside of the joint venture for a minute, you can see the joint venture area here, the boundary in blue. The other area in colour here is 100% owned Hammer ground. Hammer's already defined a number of JORC resources in the area, including up here at Jubilee, and then also at Elaine. So Elaine has a 10 million tonne, roughly 1% copper ore body there. So when we start talking about this trend from Trafalgar and seeing mineralisation for 3 kilometres, the magnetics actually look really good all the way up to the boundary of the joint venture area for 6 kilometres. Go a little bit north, we hold this ground 100%. So for our shareholders, these will be projects that we think now are highly prospective and due to be drill tested later this year and will form part of our, I guess, renewed and reinvigorated work programs in Mount Isa. Overall, I mentioned those 10 targets that we tested early on. 7 of those were in the JOGMEC joint venture. They're all highlighted up here in the black. As I said, we're still waiting on the final assays from 5 of those prospects there. It was a pretty strong program for the year. We're working with JOGMEC now to define what the work program will look like for the next 12 months. But I think it's fair to say there'll be a lot happening within our tenure in Mount Isa, both within the JOGMEC joint venture and within our own 100% owned ground. In our own ground last year, we did a bunch of soil surveys down around the Tick Hill region. The Tick Hill hosts a high-grade gold deposit that was mined back in the 90s. I think it ran at above 20 grams per tonne for about 700,000 tonnes of ore, so a really high-grade deposit. That soil sampling program identified a number of large soil anomalies, and we're doing a lot of work on the ground there to try and prove up some drill prospects. There's a bit of work done around our Kelman project. I'll talk a bit more about that in a second, but I think there's some zones there that shape up nicely for some further exploration work. Our Kelman project, I think quite often it gets lost in our portfolio. We actually hold 400,000 tonne of copper equivalent metal already in JORC defined resources. The pick of those is at the Kelman deposit, a 20 million tonne ore deposit, running at approximately 1.8% copper equivalent, made up of copper, gold, molybdenum and rhenium. Some really high-grade intersections in this project. They are deep down at 580 metres, but 7.7 metres at 23% copper and half a gram per tonne gold is a pretty stunning intersection. And in the current market for copper, putting out drill results like that, I think would be pretty exciting for everyone. One of the things we did last year was we did a magnetotelluric study, two-dimensional survey running across the Kelman deposit. And the Kelman deposit you can see here in the red. And you can see a nice little anomaly sitting behind the wireframes there for the Kelman deposit, signifying that deposit. Along strike from that, not along strike, but to the east and west of that deposit, we can see a number of anomalous features as well. And I think these make great exploration targets. In particular, the Kelman West structure. Bear in mind we're facing south here. The Kelman West prospect, a really interesting looking anomaly, actually sits underneath some lead and zinc soil anomalism. And these are the types of targets we're going to look to test over the next 12 months. So what's next in Mount Isa? I touched on the work that we're doing on the JOGMEC joint venture. What I think is Hammer's really looking now to build, a copper inventory in the region. The Jubilee deposit, Elaine, both in close proximity to what we're doing at Trafalgar. The Kelman deposit I spoke about is probably about 20 kilometres south of Trafalgar, and that's not in the joint venture, so that's 100% Hammer owned. But starting to build a metal inventory in Mount Isa and potential for developing, a bit of a copper mine story in Mount Isa. I think we're starting to build that critical mass, and with some exploration success at Trafalgar and along that trend, I think the inventory starts to look quite interesting from a development perspective. I don't have long left. I've previously spoken at length about our prospects in the Yandal Belt, but we've been here now for 18 months. We've just drilled 3 target areas in the Yandal Belt over last year. We still have results pending for one of our diamond holes in the area. The 3 project areas that we drilled are north of the Aurelia deposit. So Aurelia is owned by Northern Star. They're doing development studies, looking to take that ore up north, up to Jundee. Interestingly, obviously they now own the Thunderbox deposit to the south. You've got the Bellevue group out here and Darlow down to the southeast there. So we've got some prime real estate within the region, but we've been testing to the north of Aurelia. And the Bronzewing South property, we've been doing some diamond drilling there, and we've slowly been piecing together the geology there. I think we're going to have some great targets to test there this year. And no one really likes as a shareholder to hear about a technical success, but we drilled an EM conductor at a prospect called Ken's Bore to the southeast there. We intersected 40 to 50 metres of semi-massive to massive sulphide. Unfortunately, it didn't hold any nickel and it didn't hold any copper or zinc. So a lot of pyrrhotite and pyrite, I guess, shows that the geophysics there worked. Unfortunately, it just didn't hold the mineralisation that we're hoping that it did. The Bronzewing South tenement, it's effectively only had 2 years of real exploration. So this was tied up in a long and lengthy, protracted legal battle. Eventually, it got resolved, the gold price crashed and people walked away from both the Bronzewing mine and this exploration. But you can see here a number of areas, the red and the pink, showing really good soil geochemical anomalies. A lot of people have come in here and drilled and tried, sorry, not a lot of people, not many people have come in here, tried and drilled to any great depth greater than 100 metres. You can see here I've plotted up all of the drilling that has occurred to a depth of greater than 100 metres. A lot of the drilling focused obviously on those geochemical anomalies, but also this shear zone that sits to the east of the Bronzewing gold deposit up here to the north, and along the tenement boundary up here to the west. There hasn't been a lot of drilling in this prospective corridor between the dolerite unit and the eastern shear zone that sits out there. As I said, we recently drilled some gravity low targets here. We're waiting on the assays from the second hole, but again, a technical success. Our gravity low theory was that we would be drilling lots of quartz and carbonate veining, which we think is essential for hosting the gold. The first hole came back with not a lot of gold in it. We hold out hope for that second hole, but interestingly, we have a number of other gravity features still to test, sitting in this central corridor, which haven't been tested by previous drilling. If we have a look in section, drilling these 2 deeper holes out here, approximately 4.5 to 5 kilometres south of the Bronzewing gold deposit, we all of a sudden are starting to build a picture of what the geology looks like, plunging from the south of the Bronzewing deposit through to these holes. Now that we're able to build up a picture of what that geology looks like, all of a sudden we have a target zone in here which is starting to take shape. If we look in plan on the right, you can see that corridor light up here. There's a number of cross-cutting features here, so providing the fluid pathway for the gold mineralisation. We're going to come in here and do some detailed gravity work to define these target areas, but we'll be looking to drill test these later this year from an RC and diamond perspective. North Aurelia, that trend to the north of the Aurelia pits that I spoke about, we've probably had our most success here over the time. Some really good intersections here in our air core drilling, 8 metres at 4.2 grams per tonne from 20 metres, 5 at 3.5, all fairly shallow intersections, quite promising. We put 2,000 metres of RC drilling into this late last year. And I guess what we came up with there is, some good intersections, 1 metre at 25 grams per tonne, 1 metre at 20 grams per tonne. We're still reviewing the geology and trying to piece together this area. But what it shows to us is a lot of the historical exploration through here has been ineffective. It never picked up this mineralisation trend before, and it opens up the corridor for more work for us. We're just about to commence in March an air core program over a geochemical anomaly out here to the west of Target 3. No drilling out there historically, and also in the corridor around Target 4 where there hasn't been a lot of testing out to the east of a zone that we've identified that is important to the mineralisation we see down at these Aurelia deposits. So a busy program shaping up in Bronzewing as well. So we've got that air core program, the RC and diamond drilling later in the year once we've better defined those targets at Bronzewing South. And we've got a portfolio here which we've been growing, putting in new applications, acquiring tenements. We're looking to increase our foothold in the region and really, I guess, try and define a resource here. And that's an overview and snapshot, I guess, of what's to come for Hammer in 2021. Probably the predominant focus for our shareholders is our news flow coming out of Queensland, both in the Jogmec joint venture and the Trafalgar prospect. A lot of work on our own 100% owned tenements in the region, whilst in WA I just outlined what we're up to then. I'm more than happy to take questions out at the booth, and I'm around all week. It's a big year for Hammer and our shareholders, and I look forward to keeping you all updated as we progress.
Thank you, Daniel. Altec Chemical